Here.
Commissioner Lang,
Here.
Commissioner Galassi,
Here.
Commissioner McCauley, Commissioner Youssef Z. Here.
Okay, moving on to item C, salute to the flag. Will everybody please rise? All right, ready, begin?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on to item D, approving the order of the agenda.
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to item E, blue folder items, additional backup materials. Do we have any blue folder items?
Not at this time.
No? Okay. All right, moving on to the consent calendar. Would any of the commissioners like to pull an item from the consent calendar?
I would like to pull item F2, the minutes.
Okay. Is there any other items any of the commissioners would like to pull from the consent calendar? Okay, can we make a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item F2?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar minus F2.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to item G, excluded consent calendar items. Commissioner Morocco.
Thank you. Before I get to the contents of the minutes, we are an amalgamation of all sorts of different staff people here, and it would be nice if we can designate in the minutes, like when we have, certain officials here, what times they were here, so that it doesn't look like they were here the whole the meeting if they weren't here. And that way, if something goes on in one of those things, you can actually have in the minutes that they weren't here for that part of the meeting. So when we get to the stuff that we're going to be talking about, I assume that you guys are going to leave after it's done. So it would be nice to note that. But going to the minutes itself, so on item L1, there's a couple sections in there, and our chair's motion was actually left completely off of it. So on page 9 of 11 under L1, it's in the second page. There was...
It's on the second page. Okay.
Second page, it's on the, second page of the L1. So there was a substitute motion made by the chair as part of the discussion, and there's no reference to that anywhere in there. So, well, it says that the motion failed for lack of a second on the first place. It was a substitute motion that who made the motion said, we'll go with that. And all I was doing was talking about we should be making a motion, but the motion was actually made by the chair, and it's not there. And if you look at the video, you'll see that there was a whole big discussion on that. And I think that's, that was it. It was right before the substitute motion was made right before the motion by Commissioner Caldwell. So if you listen to that part of the record, you'll see that it needs to be reflected. And I know every year we go through new minute secretaries, but.
No, understood. Thank you.
That's it.
I have a couple of changes for the minutes as well. On page 4, I think you flipped us around, Commissioner Lang and I. So it was I, actually, Galassi, suggested having the minor alteration subcommittee review the fence revisions. And it was I as well who made the motion on page 4. And then again on page 6, It was I who made the motion for the second preservation item.
Excuse me, now, who did we have down incorrectly?
Oh, you had Commissioner Lang,
Okay,
and it should be Commissioner Galassi.
yes.
And then again on page 10, I think it was 10, let me just double check. Under referrals to staff, it was actually I who mentioned that I had spoken to Director Orta regarding pickleball.
I noticed that one as well.
So we'll make those changes. Any additional changes?
That's it.
Do we have to make a motion on this since this is a part of the consent calendar?
Well, in the past, what we've done is if there were no changes, we'd pass them. What we've done before, also when there have been changes, to accept with changes, or it's at your discretion to have them be brought back at our next meeting for further review. So it's up to
I
the
would
commission.
move that we bring it back for the next meeting. And I think there's extensive review that needs to be done by the person who made them.
Right, and I'll second that. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Before we move completely off this, I do want to congratulate Mr. Vinke for getting the project of the digital daily breeze into his report. And that's in the director's report, so thank you for doing that.
all right. Moving on to item H, public participation on non-agenda items. Item H1, free comments and emails received from the public.
We do not have any e-comments, nor do we have anyone on Zoom.
Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on a non-agenda item? Nope. Okay. Moving on to item I, ex parte communication. None. Okay. Moving on to item J, public hearings. Item J1, a public hearing considering a CEQA exemption declaration, a request for designation of the building and property as a local historic landmark, and a certificate of appropriateness for a remodel and addition to a potential historic resource pursuant to Chapter 4, Title 10 of the Redondo Beach Municipal Code. All right, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Do we need to administer any subsequent oath to that, or is that sufficient?
That should be
Point of
sufficient.
information, do we need to either approve the recommendation of the process, or do we need to have a formal vote to open the meeting?
I think that's just a best, like,
I've seen it done both ways, that's why I'm asking.
And,
I think we can go ahead and open.
On this item, to open the public hearing, yeah, just make a motion to open the public hearing, and then you usually recognize staff for the presentation of the item.
Somebody like to make a motion?
I move that we open the public hearing and administer the oath.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Does the city have? Would the city
Yes,
staff like to
thank
speak
you
first?
very much, Chair, members of the commission. My name is Sean Scully. I'm the planning manager with the city of Redondo Beach. It's my first time presenting or working with this body. I'm looking forward to it. I'll probably be at all the meetings with our assigned planner for the cases that are used to be under the purview of the Preservation Commission. So that's, you'll see me and sometimes our director, Mark Weiner, as well. So this item before you tonight, we also have the applicant present. We've worked really closely with the applicant on this project. We feel really good about how this is going to evolve this property. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to our senior planner, Andrew Svitek, and he's recent with the city. He's been here
1 month.
1 month. So this dropped in his
Nice.
lap. He's picked it up running, and He's done a really good job with it. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew for a presentation. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, Commissioners.
Get his monitor queued up. He has that PowerPoint presentation.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Andrew Svitek. I'm a senior planner, and I'm presenting on this item, which is a landmark designation and certificate of appropriateness for the rehabilitation of a residence located at 217 Avenue F. This project site is located on the north side of Avenue F, west of PCH. The property is zoned R1, which is single-family residential. The surrounding properties are also all zoned R1, and the lot size is approximately 6,000 square feet. The first portion of this presentation will deal with the landmark designation, and the second portion will deal with the certificate of appropriateness for the proposed work. Here are some pictures of the current residents, of the residents currently as seen from the street. So this is a B-rated structure in the historical survey. These are somewhat less unusual or distinctive than A-rated structures, but they are well-designed buildings and often have a relationship to significant owners, which is the case here. And this being a Spanish colonial style, some of the main character-defining features you see on this house are the smooth stucco, which will be restored. Currently, it's been covered up by a rough type of stucco, and you see that peeling off, revealing the original stucco. And that's going to be a major portion of this project. This house also features exposed stained rafter tails, terracotta roof tiles, exposed stained posts with corbels and beams at covered areas, a courtyard patio entry, and it has a very interesting Spanish revival type of massing where you have a prominent living room that is backed up by the rest of the house. This residence has had 3 owners, the last of which was Patricia Dreisler, who's the significant person that is associated with this property and will be the basis for this landmark designation. There were a few permits that were found on this, mostly to do with the garage, but the house is mostly original. For a landmark designation, we need to meet 1 out of these 5 criteria, and we can make findings for all 5 of these. However, we believe the significance of this mainly falls to the association with Patricia Dreisler. But certainly this house meets the full criteria and could come in under other criteria as well. Here's just an obituary and a picture of Ms. Dreisler and some of the accomplishments and contributions that she made to the Redondo Beach community included heavy community involvement, which eventually led to becoming the first department head with the city of Redondo Beach. She was actively involved in a lot of organizations, prominent in historic preservation. She's had a high school named after her, and the Redondo Beach Historical Museum has been dedicated in her honor. So now we can move to the next phase of this request, which is a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed rehabilitation, restoration, and additions to the structure. As you can see, it's very much original with a need for extensive restoration and rehabilitation. And these are I think these are the east, actually south and north, east and west.
Yeah, and if I may, Andrew, real quick, if you go back to that picture, where you can see where that heavy stucco is peeling off. A big component of the restoration work is going to be removing all the pink stucco to the underlying smooth finished stucco, which is a real contributing architectural factor and element for the, for the historic resource. So that's a really critical component to this project.
So we got a few slides here about the project scope. So there will be 2 additions. In addition to the rehabilitation, there will be a small 56 square foot addition on ground level in the northeast corner, where there's kind of a notched area now, and they will expand the kitchen. And there will be also an addition on the upper level of approximately 354 square feet. And there will be an interior remodel that will take care of the kitchen, the bathrooms, the laundry area. And the work will also consist of replacing electrical, heating, mechanical systems. As far as in the front, the proposed work involves restoring the covered porch area and entryway courtyard, and also rebuilding the front staircase to meet current code requirements. The steps up are too tall at this time. The stucco will be restored on the totality of the house. There will be mostly replacement windows, as the current windows have a lot of dry rot, and they will be detailed matching the current sills and sash dimensions. And then the front door will have a large stained wooden raised panel to meet the style of this house. And there will be restored walkways and a courtyard that will emphasize the steps and the risers. And the designer will have some samples on that. So in the upper level, there will be a new family room that will be facing the backyard on the upper floor. And there will be a balcony, covered balcony with French doors that will step out onto the balcony. And the interior of the house will be reconfigured. So the bathroom and the closet will be swapped, and I think there will be a new bathroom in the addition. The upper level addition will be tied into the roof line and will be located behind the main ridge, which will mean that the front facade will remain unchanged. And the roof over the addition will maintain the same pitch as the existing roof. However, it will be differentiated because it is designed as a sloping extended mansard type, with the center of the new roof being a flat roof. So we have some renderings of the proposed elevations. The first one is the front, which is the south. And the south will remain the same as it is now with restoration work. Actually, the front window will be restored to this shape. Here is the west elevation. You can see that rear addition, second story addition, which features that walkout back balcony and those 2 windows. And that has a different roof line from the existing house. This is the north elevation, which faces the yard. Here again, you see the upper level balcony with the walkout French doors, which is a new feature to this to this house and differentiates the addition. And here's the east elevation, and you can see the upper level addition of one window and then walkout balcony and a little bit of the addition, that little tiny addition on the ground level right below it. The next two slides are floor plans. This is the ground floor. You can see in the northeast corner is that little tiny addition that will join those two walls and create a new corner, and this will become part of the kitchen. And here in red is the upper level addition. And beyond that to the north is going to be the walkout balcony. And this also shows how the closet and the bathroom will be relocated within the existing structure. The next couple of slides feature our preservation ordinance and the findings that we need to make. The character defining features of the residence will remain in place, and any salvageable features are encouraged to be restored and rehabilitated. Any windows that can't be restored will be replaced with similar windows of the same type, design, and materials. And the existing covered porch, which apparently is not original, will be also restored. And it will have the same defining characteristics of the house. The other finding we need to make under the preservation ordinance is that the house will retain the essential elements that make the resource significant. So the significant elements here are the roof form and details, the existing fenestration, the courtyard porch entry with stained wood elements, and all of these will, and also the stucco that will be brought back. So all of these will remain, be restored or rehabilitated when possible, or replaced if necessary. So here's also, again, a summary of the findings, and the project complies with our zoning code as far as setbacks, FAR, outdoor living space, and building height. So the staff recommendation is that the Public Amenities Commission adopt an exemption declaration, approve the landmark designation for the property located at 217 Avenue F, and approve the certificate of appropriateness for the restoration, rehabilitation, and remodeling of the structure and the rear additions. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
We can start with you, Commissioner Rocco.
Sure. I had several questions. One's a process question, and Sean, you may be the one to be able to answer it. You're asking us to do two things. One is to approve a landmark designation, and then one is to approve, the other one is to approve the certificate of appropriateness. I've never had to deal with this before. Can we split and say, have a separate resolution for the landmark designation and a separate one dealing with the actual certificate? Because I think there are two different things in this context, and I would like to be able to split them.
Yeah. I mean, that could be done if it's the will of the commission
We can make that as a part of the motion if we want, if someone
Okay.
approves one or the other or both, or.
Okay. The second question I have are, okay, I've been in the house many times already, so I'm wondering, are we talking only the front house, or are we talking the front house and the back house? Because the back house, I don't believe has the same historical context as the front house does. So what are we looking at as far as scope?
Yeah, the scope for the landmark designation is the entire property. However, so it's all the structures, but the structure in the rear is an accessory dwelling unit, and the state housing laws are preempting it from the historic reservation, or excuse me, the historic resource issues and designations. So it's kind of it's a landmark property with an asterisk. I will say though, and we can speak, and the applicant's here to speak to the accessory dwelling unit as a structure where the architect has worked to integrate it with very similar architectural elements. So in staff's opinion, we feel like it does, even though it's not subject to the landmark designation criteria, it does also meet the criteria, not as clearly, let's say, and significantly, but we do feel it doesn't detract from the landmark designation.
So when we do the certificate of appropriateness, do we include that as part of it?
No.
So it's only the front part that's.
Yes. Now, the certificate of appropriateness, that's just associated with the work of in this entitlement, which is the restoration work, the addition and the restoration work of the home,
Okay,
the
'cause
residence.
some of the things that I'm seeing here look like they're dealing with the back house only. And so that's why I'm asking that question on the
Yes.
certificate.
Yeah, the back house is under a separate permit. So that although it is represented on the plans, it's not subject to the certificate of appropriateness.
Like this one looks like the back house.
No, that's not though. That's
Okay,
the
so you're
front
going to
house.
be adding a second level to the first house.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, no,
Correct.
you're not adding a second level, you're adding on. They're adding like
Yes, it's already
600
a
or
second
so
level.
square
Yeah.
footage to the back of the second level.
The
Correct.
front house had primarily one level.
No.
At one
It
point.
has two.
No,
At
it
one
has
point.
two. The front residence, and the applicants here, they could walk you through this as well. But the front house is already a two-story structure. And then this is an addition to the rear half of the house
Okay.
it's an extension of the second floor over the ground floor to the rear of the structure.
Okay. I have other questions, but I'll defer to other people to ask.
Are you, Ron, do you, is your question whether the upper level of the house is original to the house, to when it was originally built?
Yes,
I think that's where you were
yes,
going with that, correct?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the back house, I think, was even built later than that, than the 50s. When I saw this on the agenda, I did contact one of the family members to tell them that it was on the agenda. They're still in the community, most of the family members. So I don't even know if they're online or not listening to this, but anyway, yes, that's what I'm going
I
toward.
guess the question is, so the age of the original structure of the house is what? And if the second level of the house is not part of that original structure, when was that added? And
Well,
is that,
yeah.
because that would make the difference into whether or not that falls into the more than 50 years.
Yeah, I apologize for not making that clear. This house was built in 1937, and what you see currently there now, it's the main house is original. What they're asking to do is to do two small additions, one on the ground floor and one to the rear of this existing second floor. But the second floor is original to the 1937 house.
Okay.
It's part of
Correct.
the house of from 1937.
That's right.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Ron?
It does, although I'm surprised because most of the houses back in the 30s were single-story cottages. So I'm not,
There's a few
but you
Spanish
guys
ones
have
on
all the
avenues
records.
with Second stories.
What?
There's a few ones on the avenue, Spanish ones with second stories. So I don't know They must be.
I don't know.
All of the same.
That's what our records indicate, that was
Yeah,
part of
that's
the
good. The
original.
records indicated that'll take care of whatever.
It did, in the report, it did talk about the ADU structure and when the additions were built on that one.
Right.
Sure.
I actually had a
Peter.
question too about the stucco specifically because the Santa Barbara smooth stucco is like very, like a character distinct, feature for Spanish colonials in California. So is part of the scope of work to completely remove, like haul out the textured stucco all the way down to the sheeting, then to apply paper, lathing, scratch coat, everything on top of that? Because smooth, as I've recently figured out with a project that I concluded, can be sand smooth, but Santa Barbara smooth is like specific to Spanish colonials in California. So I just wanted to clarify that, and then I just wanted to also understand that, because that is obviously like a very distinctive feature within Spanish colonials. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, we have the applicant and the architect here. I think that'd be a good question for them on the actual construction element or restoration effort with respect to the stucco.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, go ahead. No,
Do
you're
you have
good.
Go
I
ahead.
do have some questions,
yeah,
but,
go ahead.
yeah, so like, my fellow commissioner mentioned, we're consolidated, and so this is our second, hearing where we've, talked about historical structure. So I'm gonna ask a few questions that's gonna help me learn a little bit more. So, just reading through the whole report and looking at the plans and the picture, of what it currently looks like and, the renderings. So in the rendering, you've changed that front window and you said you're changing back to the original window design. So what you're saying is the window that is currently on that front, room is not the original design?
No,
That's
it
correct.
is not.
It's a metal window that has an unknown date. Maybe the
It's metal.
owners could date it, but what you see on this front elevation, that would have been the authentic window style. And I don't know if they can tell from framing but they intend to restore it as it would have looked when it was built, this front facade.
Okay.
Except
and
for
so-
I guess the porch, which was also added at some point.
And so all the other windows are original, but this front one was changed?
I think I think most of the windows are wooden and rotted, but I know the existing front window is metal. And I'm sure the applicant
Because there
will
were
speak
metal
to it.
windows like in the 30s, like, right? So, or steel windows.
They can,
Okay.
the applicant definitely can.
We promise, we're just asking the city staff first, and then we're gonna open it up to you guys as well.
And then I have another couple questions. So I'm wondering about the color. So are there historical colors that the applicants have to adhere to in order for this to be? Because I imagine like if you painted this electric blue, it wouldn't, it would deviate from, or it wouldn't maintain the integrity of the historical sort of aesthetic. So I see that it's pink now, and it looks like you guys are gonna paint it white. I'm just wondering how that factors into this process and
Yeah,
if it's
with
referenced.
restoration, we try to uncover what the original, in this case, paint color would be, and that can be taken from the heavy stucco that's removed, and then you can get a sense of that stucco coloring, and then the applicant would be matching that to the, with some liberty to, certainly that looks pretty worn and dirty, so it would be a fresh color in the same scheme as that. There's no particular color that is required for historic restoration. It's really just trying to get to that original color and match that.
In this case, but in other cases, they could paint it a different color and that wouldn't
Yes.
affect.
Yes.
Okay, and I have a couple other questions. One of them is in regards to the tile risers in the front. So I noticed that, I think those were going to be added in the packet. There was a picture of one, and it kind of feels like it's like more of a modern take on a Spanish tile. And I'm wondering, because that is on the front, if that's included in something that you guys look at, or if that's just completely separate than the structure.
That's a good question. You've got a kind of a legal non-conforming condition with those steps. They don't meet code. So it's, as part of the restoration, they're going to revise those, the rise and run of those. And then with that, they're going to, put in an architectural element that they believe, and we, in our review of it, look like they are consistent with an accent feature to a structure of this era. So it's a little bit of an amendment or that to the structure to meet current codes. So then it opens it up to, kind of a distinct new element that can be introduced, and that's something that can be done with an historic resource. So it kind of falls into the, it's a distinction from the original because we're changing those original steps. So we have a little bit more latitude in that case.
I see. Yeah, because it kind of, it does alter the way, it changes it, and it ends up looking a little bit more modern.
Yes, it does.
Aesthetically.
It does. And
Okay. And then I had another question about, there was some talk about the covered porch in front of the house that's going to be restored, but it's not original. So I was kind of wondering a little bit more about that.
yeah, do we know when that was added, Andrew? That covered
Well, we
porch?
don't have a permit record for that, so I don't know if they were able to have any guesses.
Yeah,
But
so
it was, I mean, it might be a typical feature of a 1937 house.
It might be, so how does that fall into this process as well? Since it's not original, but you're putting it back in on the front of the house?
correct. It falls into that, something that's.
Period,
Similar-
correct?
What's that?
Period, correct?
Yes. So it's an element that did exist. We don't know, this one wasn't built in keeping with the original architecture, so we're going to try to kind of recreate it in consistent with the form of that era.
Okay.
So,
And then just one more. So I noticed in the existing structure, that wall, the front wall to that very small, I guess, I don't know if you'd call it a courtyard. I can't tell from the Google Maps pictures, but you guys are bringing it forward, right?
yeah, that's moving forward.
And that's attached to the house. So how does that work in terms of, you're kind of like changing the front facade? So.
Yeah, again, it kind of falls into the distinction. It's a new feature to the structure that is distinct from the original. So it's kind of interesting. The criteria, they call for compatibility and integration of the architecture, but at the same time, they want the new elements to be distinct from the original construction, so that if they're removed, we're down to the original structure, and you're not really altering that, but so it's kind of threading the needle a little bit on some of these. So a new feature can have some new elements, for example, the steps and the porch. But we're trying to integrate the porch cover, the steps, we're adding a little accent to distinct it. The wall kind of falls into that category.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
I do. 3 questions. So, Do we know if the line of sight from both the east and the west side of the property, will the new extension be visible from the street?
I think the east side, no, that house is very large. It's a 2-story house. And
From the west.
I'm not sure what about the west side, but it's, these are deep lots. Yeah, from the way they took pictures, it was very hard for them to get side elevation. And what that tells me is you can't see it from the street. You'd have to go in your neighbor's yard. So I think we're more concerned about what you can see from the street rather than from the neighbor's yard.
Yeah.
So that that's what I took away from the photos I saw.
Okay, that's question number one. So question number two, so in the need to differentiate the old and the new, when you're getting down to the smooth stucco and you're adding the extension to the house, how will you differentiate, or how will it be differentiated rather, the old to the new?
Well, I don't think you have to differentiate everything, literally every aspect. So you pick some elements, and what we found very attractive is just having different roof lines and having that rear upper balcony. And those introduce completely new elements that were not present. And if I was just going to describe the house, I would say, well, there's the original house, and there's a new balcony, and look, here's where the roof runs. So there's a way you describe how we added to the house, because those are defining elements that explain where the addition went. But it doesn't mean every little item has to be different, as long as there's defining elements you can point to.
The reason why that came up in my mind is in houses that we reviewed in the past in the Preservation Commission, that had, for example, lap siding. You had to use a siding that was visibly different in order to differentiate the old and the new. And so that's why I'm questioning, where do we draw that line? And if there was perhaps, some piece of.
Well, for instance, a balcony, it doesn't have stucco, so it's,
Right.
by definition, it's different.
But at what point does the original house end and the extension begin? And is there anything that can be, that can designate the old to the new?
I think you look at the massing, you got to look at the roof line. I don't think you can literally rip off the addition and have the original house, because you do have to be able to tie them together in a house you can live in. So I don't think it requires a strict separation. So you tie them together, and I think it's been done successfully through the roof line. And I think having the consistent stucco actually is a good option without, I don't think you have to 100% differentiate these, as long as you have sufficient clues where the new addition was done.
I understand what you're saying to me. However, from everything that I know from the 3 years that I've served on the Preservation Commission, it clearly states that there has to be, if you were to take off the addition that you're putting on, you have to know where the end was of the original house. And you should be able to differentiate the two. That's the only thing that I'm saying. So I think in order to remain consistent with the intent of differentiating the old to the new, we have to have some consistency.
Yeah, and if I may too, we looked really closely at that. We were trying to figure out how to balance that this really particular siding, because you're right, with, shiplap or other wood siding materials, you can, differentiate, and it doesn't, it's easier with that kind of a material. With the smooth stucco, it's a much more of a challenge. So we don't have the roof plan up, or I don't know if you can go to the roof plan, but the way this house is designed, the new roof is actually it's like a mansard roof, pitched mansard roof at the same pitch, and then it's flat. And then it lays on top of the pitched roof the existing pitched roof that slopes towards the rear of the structure. So it's through the roof line. If you take it's very easy, you can easily discern on the roof plan where that new addition occurs, because it sits on top of the old peak roof, and then it's a mansard with a flat roof. So it's not from the side is it distinctive, but it's easily discerned when you're looking at the roof plan where that addition, it's a completely different type of roof. Mansard with flat is laid onto that back pitch, and it's right at that, and there's still the back pitch on the sides, so it's easily determined where that new addition is based on that roof. So it's...
You can understand how someone would come here and say, but you approved that house, and why can't my house look like more even? And so
I mean, I don't
that's the
know
only
if
thing.
there's...
So I'm just, I wanted to bring that up. So that was question number 2.
Mhm.
And then question number 3, given the, the notable work of Ms. Dreisler, I know that in some previous designations, landmark designations, the house was then given the name of. So could we then call this house the Dreisler House based on the fact of her, enormous contributions to the city of Redondo Beach?
From staff's position, yes. This is, this is the most predominant component of landmarking the property. The architecture is one thing. It's a B. It's somewhat modest. Certainly could be a landmark, but what's the really distinguishing component to this home is that past resident, and it could be in the resolution. That could be something that could be added.
And most of our landmark properties are referred to by the predominant owner's name. So I think more often than not, these houses take on that name of who we found to be a significant person who lived in the house.
Any more questions for staff?
Yes, I got a couple more deferred. There was discussion in the papers, and I don't know exactly which page, that the plan was to extend the wall on the west side outward. I didn't see any pictures that describe that, but is that going towards the street itself?
No, that was on the rear, the ground floor in the rear northeast corner. There's about a 60 square foot addition where currently it's kind of a notched corner, and they're proposing just to make that a right angle corner, and that gives them a slightly extra square footage they can use as part of their kitchen.
Okay.
And it's directly underneath the balcony.
Okay, I have 2 other small points. Since you're using Ms. Dreisler as the reason for the landmark designation, what I'm not getting from our discussion today is that there's something in the house that retains her personality and her touches, that it's kind of going, a lot of differentiation, a lot of different changes to it, but when it comes down to it, it really doesn't seem like it's the Dreisler house at the end of the day. I compare it to what's in Dominguez Park, which have clear differentiations, but they're also, the personality of the people that live there are carried out in the restoration of it.
I just want to clarify one thing. Our purview is not the interior of the house, correct? Our purview is the exterior. So I want to be careful with talking about the interior of the house.
I'm talking about the exterior, because that little entranceway was part of the experience, that going to visit her, and they had a lot of party functions over there, so that's part of it. But and it's going to bring me to my last point, which I think is piggybacking on Commissioner Gillespie's comment, and I don't know if it's ever been done before, but if this is the Dreisler house and we have a number of other houses' names, can we, as part of the landmark process, have the people that are doing these improvements embedding in the contract like the clampers do with all sorts of signs around there, some sort of bronze plaque saying, this is the house that Pat Dreisler lived in, or this is the apartment that Charles Lindbergh lived in, or whatever it is, but somehow get that, the landmark thing, so people that walk around, and Avenue F is 2 blocks from the beach in this one, can actually stop and see and get the history. And I don't know if that's been done before.
To my knowledge, no, but I don't know all of the houses in Redondo Beach.
And I don't know if that's the
To
purview.
my
of-
knowledge, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that something doable?
I'm not aware of that, other than on where the city is now the owner of the property. But on privately owned properties, we haven't, to my knowledge, it's not to say it hasn't happened, but some plaque has been installed commemorating whatever the,
Yeah.
defining feature is.
I was also going to say that too, just because, again, if it's not city property, I mean, this is a private property, right? And even if it might have the historical significance from that component, this is still, like we were discussing earlier, this could qualify under a purview, a litany of different things as a historic property, right? So that's one component of it. So again, if this is an original Spanish colonial house and they restore it to its original period correct aesthetic, then we don't need to satisfy, via a plaque or anything. I mean,
No, but the
Isn't the
sidewalk
histo-
belongs to the city.
you're talking about the exterior, the side.
Yeah, if you're walking down the street, you're walking on the city sidewalk, there would be something that says, hey, this.
But that's not a matter of this particular this
We're only
is,
talking
this
about two
is,
different things. We're talking about making it designated a historical landmark, which we tie it to the resident. And the other thing is deeming it a historic property. Is it two different things or is it the same thing?
No, that's the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, if you've got the landmark designation as one determination from this body, and then the issuance of the certificate of appropriateness, which is the addition, the restoration work, the actual physical work to the property needs the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness, because it's a potentially historic resource with a B designation, and then at the same time, it's getting a landmark designation. So if you're a landmark designated property and you do an addition, you need a certificate of appropriateness. So,
Okay, because we saw some houses the last time and they weren't landmarks.
No, they were not.
they,
landmarks.
yeah,
They
they
were
were,
just-
right.
They were just
So
historic.
that
but they
there's
could
two.
qualify under different purview for
Yeah,
Mills
it's-
Act exemption.
So there's two, you're required to issue a certificate of appropriateness, not only for a landmark designated property, but a potential historic resource per a historic survey designation of A or B. This one happens to be a B structure. So it could, they could just be coming to you as a B structure for this addition and not looking to get a landmark designation. But they submitted that application as well.
And just to mention, the purpose of landmarking is by reducing property taxes, they're committing to doing a lot of restoration work at their own cost. And so there's a public policy in promoting the extra care that these historic homes take. And so you can choose to undertake work without getting that benefit, but to restore a historic house can be very expensive, and that is the purpose of the landmarking.
Is there any additional questions directed to staff before we open it to the public and the applicants?
I have a question. Are there nearby landmark houses in that area?
Yes, there is another landmark house on Avenue F. I think it's 2 or 3 houses to the west. And I was trying to count landmark properties in the avenues. I think I got about 17, 18. And the avenues are
Are those
about 150
predominantly-
total houses.
Of the 17 or 18, are they predominantly west of PCH, or are they?
That's correct.
That's like my
So I'd say maybe 10 to 20% of that neighborhood is landmarked.
And of those, are a lot of them after the, like, this reason is because of the person? Are they kind of mixed, or are they? Not that, you may
I
not
wasn't
know
able
that.
to do that level of research, but oftentimes, if you're dealing with class A or B, you're probably going to have a significant person as well as a historic structure. Sometimes you don't have a significant person and it's just a nice structure, but a lot of times a nice house is going to have somebody important that live there as well.
Right. And the property tax, or the value of the property tax that they would have to use to maintain would be the value of like the normal property tax amount annually? Or is there a different number on that? So if the house is purchased for $2 million and it's $20,000, do they have to put $20,000 annually into maintaining it?
No, but there is maintenance requirements. So, that's the agreement with the Mills Act contract, is that they maintain it in a, pristine condition that allowed them to be granted the landmark designation. So it's not a dollar amount for the maintenance requirement. It's a condition requirement.
And so that
Getting the tax break.
properties in this situation are not paying property tax.
No, they are paying.
They
It's
are
just
paying.
it's
It's
a
a
reduced
reduced
rate.
amount. Okay.
Right,
Is that
yes.
50%? Is it?
Yeah, what is that?
Well-
Have you guys done, they've done the research. I don't know what the latest figure is.
Well, it's not a percentage, it's a formula. So what happens is someone will go out, a tax assessor.
Okay.
If we get approved,
Right.
a Mills Act tax assessor will go out to the property and do an appraisal on the rental value, the fair market rental value of the property, plug it into a formula that then gives the Mills Act property tax amount, which is based on a multiple of the rental value rather than the last sale price. And that does not reduce it by a set percentage.
Yeah.
You could estimate that it would.
Excuse me, we actually would need her to come to the mic. We're not getting any of this on the.
Yeah,
So,
so
it's okay.
if there's no more questions
Okay.
directed to staff, we'll go ahead and direct questions to the applicants. Would you guys like to come up and speak?
Hi. Not sure where you'd like me to put this. My name is Jennifer Mora. I purchased this property with my husband, Chris Young, who is here back in October of 2022. And I'm really just here to answer any questions you guys have about our plans for the property, what we'd like to do, and anything that we know about the property that could help you with your decision.
Go ahead and continue with that statement you were talking about, just as you
Sure.
were sitting down. Just repeat that whole
Yeah,
thing if you
of
don't
course.
mind. I'd love to hear it
So
again.
the way the Mills Act taxes work from my research is they send out a property tax appraiser to the house after we get the landmark designation, and then we have to do a separate application for the actual Mills Act. So this is only step one, and then we apply for the Mills Act. At that point, we get put on a list, and real property tax appraisal will come out, do a real property appraisal based on the fair market rental value of the property. At that point, there's a statutory formula for it on the Mills Act, where the fair market rental value is subject to a multiple, and then your annual property taxes are equal to that multiple of the fair market rental value. Now, obviously, it's going to depend on what you purchased the house for, which created that new tax basis, versus what the fair market rental value of the property is and the multiple, as far as how much your reduction actually is. Our annual property taxes since we purchased the house in 2022 for about $2.3 million is, our annual property taxes, I think, are around between $23,000 to $24,000 a year. I did my own Mills Act estimate on what the property tax savings would be based on a guess of what the fair market rental value would be. I expect a property tax assessor would have a more accurate number, but the reduction in property taxes I would expect to be maybe half, if that. If we say we save $10,000 a year in property taxes, the amount of the restoration and rehabilitation of this project that we're doing and committing to by doing it,
This project right here.
this project
I
right
can
now that
imagine,
you're looking
yeah.
at,
That's
it
going to
would
set you
take
for
me,
15 years, maybe more.
my children will still be paying off the amount, if you look at the savings versus cost,
Right.
when you do the time, like cost benefit analysis.
So you're not tied into like each year having to do, I mean, you have to do basic maintenance, but
Yes,
when you do a big restoration, you're still paying property taxes, you're getting a reduced amount, but they want to, the purpose of the law is to encourage the big project every few years, not necessarily putting money in every year. So I think that's good. I think it's a huge project that you're undertaking as well.
yes.
So does the appraiser come out before you do the work or after you do the work?
I am not sure. It's usually tied, I think, to when you put the Mills Act application in, but I am definitely not the Mills Act expert, so I would have to look into that.
The reason I'm asking it started with my first question. Should we be voting separately for the landmark designation and then have the issue about what, so you can start the process and then have the vote on the actual plans?
So there's actually three things that you're talking about. One is the landmark designation, one is the certificate of appropriateness, and one is the Mills Act.
Right.
Because in order for us to move forward with the project, the certificate of appropriateness for the plans that we have submitted is required whether it's a landmark or not, in my understanding, because when they did that survey in the 1980s and went around Redondo and just started grading houses based on, we think this might be historic, this has been noted as potentially being a historic residence. Anybody who lives there or owns that house, we want them to come to us to make sure they don't just knock it down and build a McDonald's, because it looks pretty good from the street, it's been there for a long time and we want to preserve it. So in the 1980s, they gave all these properties in Redondo a grade, A, B, C, or it's not historic at all. So if you buy one of those properties now and you want to do anything to it, you need the certificate of appropriateness, whether you apply for landmark designation or not. So when you say, should you do the landmark separately versus the certificate of appropriateness separately, from that, so we can get on with the project, from that perspective, it really doesn't matter. We need the certificate of appropriateness to get on with the project. You can delay the landmark designation, but that doesn't change that we need the certificate of appropriateness to start rehabilitating this house as soon as possible. And from what you've seen of the pictures with the stucco falling out, the dry rot on the windows, there's some serious deferred maintenance on this property. And the longer it goes without getting really fixed, not just slap some, duct tape and spit on a house and see if it'll stick together. This really needs to be fixed because there's holes and there's cracks in the plaster. When we get these rains, water's getting in. Then you're gonna get even more rot in the actual structure of the house. The longer we wait, the more that deferred maintenance,
the more expensive it's going to be, the less likely we're actually going to be able to restore this house. And we purchased this house instead of a new house with all new everything because we like that it's historic. We want to restore it. We're really looking forward to it. We've been excited about this since we put the bid. We actually wrote a letter to Mrs. Reisler's children when we went to purchase the house, letting them know we didn't come in and intend to just tear it down and create a new one. That's why we like it. So we're restoring all the interior hardwood floor. There's this awesome old original doorbell that has the chimes hanging with the arch. That's getting restored, and we're putting a new box over it because it's been missing the box for who knows how many years. So we are, even though the interior is not the purview, we are even doing restored interior to match the historic aesthetic to keep that going. I know you had asked a question earlier about the entry of the home, and there was questions about the original, whether the added porch and the roof. From what we've been able to determine, the roof over the porch was probably added sometime in the early 1940s, which is not that long after the house was originally built. The way we've been able to tell that is the porch material on the ground is a typical 1940s concrete stamped porch. And you can see where the beams from the roof go into the concrete, that it's been there. There hasn't been patching around it. It's the original poured concrete from the 1940s. The problem is when they did it, the slope of the roof from over the porch doesn't match the slope of the roof on the front. So you get water leaking, and which gets down and, again, causing a lot of deferred maintenance problems. The other problem is there's that tree in the front courtyard, which is an amazingly gorgeous, awesome tree that I'm in love with. We had a tree specialist, an arborist out there, and we're having people do another round on the foundation. It's a very old tree. It was planted way too close to the foundation of the house, and the roots have now started to impact the foundation. That's why the plans that you see do not still include that tree. Our original discussions with our designer, Jackie, were trying to figure out a way to keep that tree. But with the inspections and the people that we've consulted as far as the foundational integrity, because the foundation still needs to be retrofitted for earthquake safety, that has not been completed yet. The experts we consulted said that that tree can't stay there and have the foundation be retrofitted and safe.
Do you have any plans to put another tree in the front yard?
Yes, we want another tree in that courtyard area because we do agree with you, Commissioner Marocco, that that entryway is quite a feature of the house. We want to put another tree there, but we need to consult with a landscape expert as to what tree is appropriate there for growth. So it can be a long-term solution. I'd like to see an old tree there at some point. And I want to make sure that the roots don't go into the foundation with the new tree.
And I do have a question for Mr. Scully. So was this in the 1996 Historical Resources Survey? And when is the next one coming out? Because I think they've appropriated money for that.
Yeah, we're getting, so the answer to the first part of your question, yes, it was part of the the 90s survey, Historic Resources Survey. And for the next survey, which we're way overdue, we actually do, you're correct, we've got a budget for it. And we'll be going out to bid for consultants the beginning of this next year. And then we'll take it from there. I think there's some policy questions the council is going to probably be wrestling with on that issue. So we'll see how that all plays out.
Can I ask another question just for understanding this whole process like a little bit more? So there's, looks like there's a income tax credit from designating a structure a historical landmark. And then there's a property tax reduction. And so those are two different things, right? And so I'm just trying to understand a little bit more. Like I said, the last structures we talked about, we're not trying to get a historical landmark designation. So I'm just curious a little bit about
and
the difference
our property owner identified it pretty clearly as well. But yeah, the landmark is just about the property, well, it's about qualifying and preserving the historic resource that meets the criteria. But as part of that, then you can take it the next step, which is enter into a Mills Act contract with the city to preserve that landmark. And with that Mills Act contract, you can go to with the assessor's office, you can then get a reduced property tax rate.
Okay, so it needs to be a historical
tax bill.
landmark in order to potentially get the income or the property tax.
Correct.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. All right, thank you.
Does this property border an alley as well?
In the rear, behind the garage, there is an alley,
So
yes.
the utility lines are all in the back?
Yes,
Is that going to change any of that?
no,
Okay.
no, definitely do not want utility lines marring the front, so there's not going to be a change there.
And then I had a question about the stucco and the process with that too, because again, Spanish colonials native to California, that's Santa Barbara smooth kind of aesthetic to it. And just, again, I mentioned I've recently gone through something like this, and smooth can mean a lot of different things for it, but just to maintain the integrity of what Spanish colonial and like historic property is, can you just touch base a little bit about the stucco plan? I'm sure it's like on your permit with like the complete demolition and removal, because sometimes like when you're refabbing stucco, you can either put lathing and then, do your scratch coat on top of that, but it sounds like this is a complete removal of the original stucco or whatever's left.
I don't believe that there's going to be a complete removal of the original stucco because we would like to preserve some of the original but it really depends once they are able to remove all of that pink spray-on stucco that I believe got added sometime in the 1970s. We need to see the state of the original stucco underneath, and
Okay.
because we don't know what it looks like.
So I guess this,
And maybe this is a question better for Jackie, who understands the construction portion of it more than I do.
this is a separate question now, right? Because if you're trying to see the condition of the original stucco, are you trying to rehab that? Because in the purview of this, it sounds like you're trying to spray new stucco everywhere.
No, it didn't.
That was it not to completely redo the stucco? Was it?
Mentions it a few times in there.
Because I would, based on the texture of this, I would assume doing smooth stucco, is that only going to be in a certain portion of it? Or is it going to be?
No, it's the whole structure.
Underneath
thing, right?
is smooth stucco already.
Underneath.
Okay, so you're
yes.
rehabbing to the original structure.
Yeah.
Right, so underneath
Okay.
is the original smooth stucco you're talking about. Sometime in the 1970s,
yeah.
somebody sprayed a whole bunch of the Sears
Yeah.
spray pink, like
They probably-
textured stucco on top of it.
Right.
And
Or they coated on top of the
or
original.
they coated on top of the original. But if you were standing next to the house right now, all that pink stucco is bubbling off the house, and it's falling off the
Probably
exterior of the
put
house
leaving on it.
in big sheets
Yeah.
down to the side.
Oh, yeah.
It's really starting to look pretty dilapidated, to be completely honest. So what our plan would be, and that's a great picture of it. Underneath, that's the smooth stucco that you're seeing. That's not concrete over top or somebody trying to patch something on the side. That's the original underneath all the pink. At some point in the past where you can see the pink smooth, apparently the stucco had fallen off and the previous owner had probably hired somebody and just painted it to match the pink.
Can you zoom
texture.
into the left picture,
Yeah.
please?
Let's see.
No.
Yeah, maybe you have to go,
So-
maybe escape. And we'll see if we can.
I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to see the texture, but like in person, you can see it.
I have a picture on my phone. I'm happy to pass the phone around if you want to look
I mean,
closer.
I can totally take a pic. You guys are gonna have to peel every piece of the,
Yeah, it's a big job.
All the restoration.
Oh. Is it controlled paint?
Yeah.
And
then any plans on, because you're gonna rehab these windows as well then, correct?
so if you take a look,
Replace.
I'm sorry, can you go back up to the,
You're just, slide over. And then, yeah, up on the bar. Oh, you're gonna go too far.
And while they do
All right,
that,
so this is actually a pretty good picture that shows the kind of differences in the windows, other than that front window in our house. So on the top right corner there's two windows in the southwest corner that are adjacent to each other, that are on, you can see the one facing the west, and then if you literally look through the window, you can see that there's a window on the south side. Those windows were replaced probably sometime in the 70s or 80s with just aluminum framing window. That is not an original window right there. In those corners, they are 1970s or 80s windows that got stuck in there. The ones on the back half and the bottom are the original wood sash windows. They're held together by about 100 years of paint and a prayer. When we purchased a house, they were all painted shut. I went around and with a very light paint, we had to literally start removing paint just to be able to get the windows open. When you start removing the paint, the wood framing of the windows starts falling apart in your hands. So the amount of dry rot on those original windows on the first floor, unfortunately, is going to make it difficult, if not impossible, to restore any of the original windows, which is really unfortunate because I actually wanted to give that a shot myself at my own home project and go one sill at a time, but it's just not going to work that way. So the plans do have that we will replace those with the Colby Heritage wood historic windows that are in the same frame so that it matches the style and it goes back to that.
and since you're going to replace the windows, so again, with construction, you're going to either have new construction windows or you're going to have like reno like windows, right? So this is going to be basically new construction windows. So you're going to have to stucco on top of that too. So do you guys plan, once you are starting to install the windows, that the stucco, you're going to try to match it to whatever you can salvage on the? Okay.
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay.
Did you bring some samples that you wanted to share at some point?
Well, that's the color of the color code, the stain of whatever's exposed, and kind of an idea of the color of the window. A bluey green, and just, traditional white, not stark white, but a warmer white. And pavers, and then I do have a colored tile. I don't know if you're familiar with native tile here in Torrance. Diane, she does a lot of restoration work. She's an awesome resource, but she's an artist and she hand makes tiles in Malibu and different Spanish colonial styles. And what you do is you get a pattern. We haven't picked a pattern, but you could pick a pattern, and then she's got 100 colors, and you just figure out where you want what color. And each one is a piece of art.
Beautiful.
So that's kind of when we're going to use tile on the exterior as an accent. It would be
Something from her.
And you can look her up, Diane Native Tile.
This is the one that was in your packet. So that's what I thought you were doing.
It's just a sample of something. We don't really have a set one yet. I mean, that's so
That's a
far down the
part of your
road.
finish, sure.
Yeah. That it was a concept. We're just kind of a concept for the tile.
Do we have any more questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Is there anybody else in the public that would like to speak on this?
We do not have any e-comments or Zoom participants.
And I'm Jackie from JMS Designs, and I'm the project designer. And I'm here to answer any questions, and I've heard some of the questions about stucco mostly. And since we do want to use new construction windows with nailing fins and having waterproofing properly, we'll have to bust out some stucco. And I'm sure there'll be patching, so we might have to do like a skim brown coat and then color coat everything and try to match what's there. Unfortunately, somebody did a Sears stucco coat. They sprayed the eaves, they sprayed the starter board, they just went to town with it. So that's a huge part of the restoration. So in terms of windows and things like that, that's what'll happen with the stucco. And something like Santa Barbara stucco is like the appropriate thing, because if it doesn't have a little texture, it looks too modern. And yes, the upstairs is original. It has the original toilet in there.
Keep it?
It still flushes. We can't keep it. It doesn't meet code. So a lot of the things that we have to do have to meet current code, like stairs on the outside or drainage problems or things of that nature. So
Is
that
there, I don't know how many like historical properties you've worked on, but I know that sometimes there can be an issue with stucco around a window. So if you take a window out and then you have to patch it, there's an inconsistency there. So I'm wondering if that poses any sort of, issue to.
it can be, and we hope to have a contractor that is very versed in how to do historic rehab and has a really excellent stucco man who understands the issues and how to bridge the old and the new. And we know we still have some structural things to address. So there might be places where walls are opened up and we'll have stucco patch because of that. So yeah, the stucco is a huge part of what we're going to have to encounter. And like the front window, I'm sure that front window, the original one, was rotted. And so they had to do something. It faced south, so they put the metal window in. And it's like that single glazed metal, aluminum. It's not that wonderful 1930s metal window that you would like. And the covered porch, unfortunately, they slope. I can't just leave it there because the pitch of what they did and the wood that's supporting it all is rotted. So I have to take that out. And instead of making it right and pitching it to match the original roof, it would be too low on the side. So I turned the roof, how you see it on the front elevation there, so that the roof pitches match. And then all the details will match, which will be good, because right now it doesn't. Oh, and the courtyard wall, the tree has damaged it, so we have to address it. And the tree needs to go, which was sad. But the planning department has a rule that when you have a project, you're to plant a tree in the front. And so it's part of what I'll have to specify on the plan. And we want to do something nice. So it looks more established, not just a little tree in front. Let's see. Oh, I think Commissioner Glassy, your question was about differentiation. So several years ago, I did a house 228 Avenue E, and we got historic status. And it was a one-story house, and it had a 1960s two-story in the back. And so we changed the facade of the 60s, and then I added to it. And everybody felt that it was really important to keep the stucco cohesive because it was stucco. But the roof massing, and you could tell by the project that that was the new part, that wasn't original to the home. where the one story in the front was original. So that's how we managed to meet that requirement. And so I tried to do that here by changing where the addition of the family room is. I don't know if there's a side view of an elevation. Where the gable is now on the second floor is the original roof line. And so I turned the roof and made it a hip. So it's, instead of taking the gable off that's original and making one bigger gable on the back, I kept the original lower roof line and not making the house taller. I like how it's low to the ground. So all I did was change the roof line with a hip and change the direction of the roof pitch. And then the balcony is a new element that wasn't there before. So that's how I addressed the differentiation. And knowing of my experience before with having consistent stucco and stain and things like that, they were good with that. And you can't see it from the street. You have to be kind of standing in the side yard to be able to see the balcony, just because of the topography and the neighboring buildings and the trees that are there. So that's how we addressed that. And the ADU in the back, it's really not cohesive with the front whatsoever. So my plan, I attached the plan to the plan packet so that you could see how the photograph showing the original and what we're trying to do to make the two things blend together with same detail, same stucco, window type, roof type. So now the whole property is cohesive. So I don't know, do you have any other questions for me that I can answer?
No.
I don't think so.
No, I have a process question. Once we get back to the,
Sure.
I had actually two process questions, and you're probably the best one to answer it.
We'll see.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So here's my process question.
I close public hearing 1
Okay.
second. Is there anybody online that would like to speak about this? Nobody?
No, we don't have anybody.
Okay. Can we make a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
So here's my process question. This is obviously most of us, first major reconstruction on a historic home. So are we, as a commission, we're responsible for what going out to the public and saying this meets the criteria that I think Department of Interior says, that's consistent with the planning process of preservation and the ordinance? Do we make specific findings of that? And ultimately, does this, because this is a major one and not a minor one, does it go to the council as a next step, or are we the final arbitrators on the matter and planning takes over and that's kind of where it goes? And then it leads to my second process question. Since again, it is a major one, do we get status reports about how the process is going in the rehabilitation of the property so that we know that something that we put in motion is finally resolved? So that's my process questions.
So I'll start with the last part of that.
Yeah.
It's basically up to them now, once assuming we approve things here, it is then up to them to follow through on the whole process. So it does not come back to us unless there is a substantial change that needs to come for a review. to our body, and then it would come back. As far as, so I know that you have a concern whether we should be voting for the landmark designation at the same time as the
I've actually worked out a solution on that, so,
Okay.
which I can share with you when we get to the
So-
motion part.
From the perspective of the landmark designation, it really does meet all of the criteria, and then some, from my experience. So for that, we can be comfortable. You know, and then as far as the certificate of appropriateness, we then need to be comfortable with the answers that both the designer and the homeowner and our planners have provided us tonight, responding to the wall, responding to the roof, presentation of the roof, if that is enough of a distinction to make the differentiation between the old and the new, to answer, you know, your concerns as far as the stucco. That's a whole other thing. So you can separate the two out, but I do not see why we would want to do that, because as the homeowners expressed, the more important thing right now would be to make sure that they get the certificate of appropriateness so that they can go and rehabilitate the house. The landmark designation is, although it seems to be like the next step, can be included in this since it already has checked off all of the boxes and doesn't impact the rehabilitation of the house, if that makes sense.
It is, you've explained this is, we've done our due diligence.
Correct.
And I think that's the standard that we're supposed to do, some sort of due diligence as we present it. and
Yeah,
approve it.
we have to ask the questions.
Okay.
Right? We have to ask those questions and be comfortable that the responses that we have received from all the particular stakeholders satisfy those questions. Some of our questions were processed, some of the questions were, you know, understanding because, you know, some of our commissioners are brand new, right? And have not entered into this process before, into the depth that we're going in now with a landmark designation. So everybody needs to be comfortable and understand all the particulars here.
I have a process question in the other direction. Should the commission deny all of these claims, what would be the recourse of the applicants in that situation?
Yeah, there are appeal provisions within the preservation ordinance.
Would that come back to us, or would that go up to the city council?
It would go to the city council.
City council.
Yes.
So either way, this is where our input is now.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then was there a third thing as well?
Yeah, that's the Mills Act contract, which that is, it can only be entered into with a landmark designation. And then that goes on to the city council.
No, I think what he means is
Oh.
the CEQA exemption. That's the third thing.
Oh, you're talking about the CEQA exemption. Oh, okay, yes.
Exemption.
And that actually has to be done prior to any of your other actions. You have to make a determination with respect to CEQA before you actually rule on the project. And that all those findings for CEQA, as well as the landmark designation, as well as the certificate of appropriateness, are in the resolution that's before you tonight.
So easier to just do the.
Do we want to have any additional discussions about anything regarding either the historical, the landmark designation, or the aesthetic of the work?
Well, I just, out of curiosity, and not to, you know, I would hate for this to actually ever come to pass, but what would happen if, you know, you remove all that terrible pink sprayed on stucco and realize that you know, the stucco underneath is
That's
not viable.
That's,
And then, does that then come back to the commission, because then we have to relook at that, or what
Well,
is?
you know, that's
then
a
you
good
gotta
question.
then you gotta pull a separate permit to go and.
Yeah, they
do-
need a separate permit, but what the condition of approval to speak to the stucco issue is pretty specific that it does have to be smooth finish to match what is the underlying original stucco. So if they, in the crazy event that it's all got to go, we'd be retaining samples of it, and they would have to, what they would restore and refurbish with new stucco would have to match, with the samples of the existing original stucco. So it's a pretty specific requirement that stucco finish has got to match the finish of the original structure, the original stucco smooth finish.
I mean, I have so many, like, from a construction standpoint, that, because you have to put paper, lathing, scratch coat on top of it, and then that's also not covering any of the original stucco that you can't salvage. So I don't know how you're, but once again, that's a building
Well,
question.
yeah, you'd have to
Yeah, you have to redo the whole,
extract.
yeah, you have to do the whole thing.
You-
There's no way, I'm just saying, I
Good
just
point.
did this.
Yeah.
There's no way to take how we do stucco today, because there's too much weight and you got to do 3 coats. You got to hit scratch coat that has to stick to something. You got to put lathing underneath it.
Right.
So I don't know if you're going to be able to blend that into and extend it to an original piece of stucco. But again, that's neither here nor there. You guys
Yeah, no.
hopefully don't have to cross that bridge, but
Understood.
yeah. So I would like to work through this so we can also kind of keep with, respect to their construction schedules and this as well.
So here's my proposal, and you can tell me if it's off base, but I think it may be a redundancy, but I do think it provides one opportunity, that we keep the resolution as it is, because it's got everything spelled out, and that way they don't have to come back or anything. But I do think it would make sense to approve as a motion the historical landmark designation of 217 Avenue F as the Dreisler House. So that way we are specific, that's what we're calling it. And then you can have the resolution with everything that's in there as well. That's what, and you can tell me if I'm off base on that, but I think that would accomplish 2 purposes.
And the CEQA is in the resolution,
No, the CEQA's separate.
so that would still be first.
We would have to vote on that first.
Yeah, yes, it's part of the resolution, but it's a separate action.
So maybe start there.
And he'll put up it'd be the adoption of the exemption declaration, approve the landmark designation for the property located at 217 Avenue F. And you could, in your motion, pursuant to Commissioner Morocco, add the name reference. And then the final action is to approve the certificate of appropriateness for the restoration rehab, subject to all the conditions of approval within the resolution. And you can do that all in one motion.
all right.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
I think just to answer to your point, Commissioner, I think the main thing is that if in the motion, if we designate that this is like the name for like a historic landmark, I mean, through the review process, the significance and its historic, again, significance is reviewed already. So I don't know what the purpose to name a privately held property would be. I mean, we can refer to it as such, but to have it documented as such, it went through a review process.
But we have a historical survey that's done of all our historical resources, and it does get categorized by either the property address or the name. And there's several that, like the one at the corner of Barrel and PCH, that has a name associated with it. So I think it would be nice. That's why you're giving it the landmark status, is because of this person, that we should have it as a separate motion. And I don't think you need a formal, the historic landmark thing is buried inside the sections of the resolution. So it's going to be redundant, but at least it says that this property is called the Dreisler House. So if I come back to you guys in 6 months and say, I'd like to put a plaque in the sidewalk as part of the historical stuff, at least it has a basis for doing that.
But it could also, if you come back and try to have that agendized, right?
Yeah.
Part of the agenda packet would say that this was previously reviewed as a, historic property. We approved it. Here's the significance for it. But to like name it as such, like, I don't know if, I think I'm a little uncomfortable with that, just because again, that's going to be a part of the motion to refer to it as, I mean, you can call it whatever you want.
Well, aren't we putting it into the public sphere by calling it a historical landmark? We're saying everybody, this property has historical significance.
Well, the applicant.
So it's not private. It's
Well,
not.
the applicant put that in there as a part of their application process for this, right? That this is the
Can we just
historical.
add- Just add, like, when you have the address, but also known as the Dreisler House.
That would work too.
It would
Would you
just
have a
be-
problem with us doing that?
If it makes this, because I can kind of cut this debate, we have no problem, I'm sorry.
Yeah, come on up.
You're on TV now, so.
Do you have to
I
open the
never
public hearing
had-
again? You actually need to open the public
Jennifer
hearing.
Mora, oh, you guys need to make a motion to open.
Yes.
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have only learned about Mrs. Dreisler through my research and through meeting her children when we purchased the house. She seemed like an amazing woman, and I am sorry I never got to meet her. We have no problem putting a plaque that says the Dreisler House on the front wall of the house.
We're not asking
Part
for
of the restoration. We have no problem with the Dreisler House being, or it being called the Dreisler House. We have, as owners, we just don't have an objection. So if that helps the debate, we will consent to it as a voluntary condition. I do understand what the chairperson is saying, whether or not there is the legal ability under the law to impose that kind of condition under the First Amendment and under the Redondo statutes and under state statutes is an entirely different thing, but we will voluntarily agree. So that could take it out of, the sphere of debate, if that helps anybody.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Someone make a motion to close.
I'll motion to close the public
I'll
participation.
second.
All in favor?
Aye. I personally like the idea of this name nomenclature of naming. It kind of gives a little cachet to, I think, the whole historical context we're dealing with. And, when you have a famous designer, architect, the name is associated with the house. I love the idea personally of having her name attached to the house, either as a secondary or primary nomenclature, either way.
It's really up to the pleasure of the commission. It's, staff doesn't have a strong opinion either way. It would just essentially live on the resolution. If they choose, it sounds like they might want to do something a little bit more, but you could leave that to the discretion of the applicant if you don't feel comfortable with
I mean, if we
actually.
want to make the motion as such, that's
Yeah.
different than requiring an applicant to comply with anything. Like, that's what I'm trying to just make sure
Okay.
we don't get to that point.
Yeah, and you wouldn't. It would just
Okay.
be,
The motion is just to call it the
Okay.
Dreisler House.
yeah.
Which we can
absorbed
do at
the
any point in
historical
time anyway.
commission as well.
I'm comfortable with that if it's solely a part of the motion. I just don't want it to get to a point, if it's outside of whatever historical, preservation code, anything like that, so. Okay,
Well, we used to be part of the historical commission. That's the historical commission speaking right now.
I would just add it literally right after 217 Avenue F, also known as the Dreisler House, in the
Okay.
resolution.
That's fine.
That's all it takes.
Okay.
We're not asking you to put a plaque on the house.
yeah, and again,
But if you want to, you can.
I just wanted to clarify that. So I guess just working through this so we can kind of continue on. Of the components that make this up, obviously the CEQA has to be first, but it's a part of this resolution.
It is.
I want to try to see if we're comfortable with all the components for the resolution and discuss anything that we're uncomfortable with. So we can probably start going down the line for that, so we can try to see if we can come to a resolution with this. Commissioner Morocco, would you like to start with that? Well, I think it sounded like
I'm fine with the resolution. I do appreciate the efforts that you're going to be doing. It sounds like it's going to be a major project that's going to last for a while, and hopefully your children will enjoy it. So I have no problem with the way it's set out in the resolution, other than the name, this is Dreisler House.
Commissioner Lang.
I agree. I'm happy with voting on the resolution. I think that you guys have all showed a lot of, commitment to honoring the structure. And I grew up in a 1920s bungalow, so I really appreciate these older homes that we have in Redondo. And it's really nice to see people buy them and not knock them down and instead invest money in them. And so, yeah.
Commissioner Morocco.
Oh, we should move forward with this. This is a good presentation. Good job.
I as well am satisfied with the answers I received, and I appreciate that you have entertained all my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'm good as well.
So I moved that, well, this is your category.
You added and referred
Okay.
to as Dreisler, so
Do I
go
have to
for it.
read
You
the whole
have
thing?
to
Okay.
read to the whole thing.
Resolution 2024-12 PA, and I don't know what the number is going to be at this point. A resolution of the Preservation Commission of the City of Redondo Beach adopting an exemption declaration, approving an historical landmark designation, and a certificate of appropriateness for the restoration, rehabilitation, and construction of additions to a potential historic resource pursuant to Title 10, Chapter 4 of the Redondo Beach Municipal Code on property located at 217 Avenue F, also known as the Dreisler House.
I would just like to add one thing. We're the Public Amenities Commission, not the Preservation Commission.
Oh, is that still in there?
No,
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is. Yeah. No. So
I
with
accept
that
that
amendment.
author's amendment.
so you don't have to reread the whole thing.
Yes, Public Amenities Commission, that is correct. So now I'm just looking for a second.
Oh, second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Can I make one more comment?
Thank you.
Just so you know that Ms. Dreisler has actually got your history presentation or is missing a lot of components, and I invite you to go to the Historical Museum this Saturday when they have holiday festivities, so you can actually get the sense of a little bit more about her history as well.
I'm good. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right.
8:19.
Okay, moving on to item K, items continued from previous agendas.
Where are we?
I don't have anything prepared. So if there's anything you want to bring up, otherwise I don't have anything carried over.
The only thing was the bylaws and anything in regards to the bylaws.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Staff has developed, I think, a really good draft, but the suggestion might be to create a subcommittee to work with staff to refine the components of the bylaws to bring back at a future meeting. We could certainly bring it back to commission, but it could take a lot of time to go through. So I think having a small subcommittee to work on that and in reviewing the other bylaws, and then we can move forward through the process. That would be my suggestion, but we have drafted, I think, a pretty good draft. It's not ready for prime time yet, but we're pretty close.
Okay. I think, I would be comfortable with that, obviously, the establishing of a subcommittee, just because we can establish it, see if we can iron out something, present it to the rest of the commission, and then dissolve the subcommittee after that. So,
Perfect.
so I'm comfortable with it. I think the scope of work is pretty limited in terms of, we don't need to have some, the purview of the subcommittee is pretty straightforward. There's not 20 things we want to achieve with the subcommittee. It's ultimately to bring a provisional draft towards the Greater Commission and having that approved as the bylaws. So I'm comfortable making a motion to establish the subcommittee. How many, we need 3 people as a part of the subcommittee. We need 2, right?
Yeah.
You can have them with one as well. I mean, we don't have bylaws that say how many you have to have, so
Right.
I'm happy to work with you if you want. I've worked with Mr. Vinke before in the Library Commission, so.
And I write Muni code part of my living, so,
Excellent.
okay. So I can help with that as well. I actually have a draft of things that I took from other bylaws, so I'm comfortable to be a part of the subcommittee too, unless somebody else wants to do that. Again, I think ultimately we just need to get a draft to the Greater Commission.
Exactly.
So, would you like to be a part of the subcommittee on establishing bylaws?
Exciting.
Good English major.
I trust that you both can.
Oh, fantastic.
handle it well.
I could see to you two gentlemen. Congratulations.
Fantastic. All right. I'll make a motion that we establish a subcommittee. We can call it the Bylaws Referral Subcommittee. The objective of the subcommittee is to ultimately get a final draft of this commission's bylaws and present it for approval to the Greater Commission, at which point we can make a motion subsequent to dissolve it. The members of the commission, or excuse me, the subcommittee will be Commissioner Morocco and myself, Commissioner Yousafzai, and then Dana, you're a part of it too.
Thank you.
And after we approve it, it has to go to the council anyway to get them to approve it.
As far as the process goes, yeah, I mean, there is but so that we can formalize a draft internally so that the commission is good with the draft, then we can move it forward through the process.
Anybody want to second the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Any
Aye.
public discussion maybe, or public comment?
Do we need public comment on establishing subcommittee?
We do not have any public comments.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Anybody else with any continued items from previous agendas? Okay, moving on. Items for discussion prior to action. Item L1, Commission Subcommittee Review and Project Update.
So this is something I kind of use a template from the Recreation and Parks items in the past. So just to kind of review, if any of the subcommittees have an oral report or a status update, they're welcome to discuss that. However, if there's any formal action or reports or anything for discussion, we would prefer to have those in advance to be able to post on the agenda. But this is just for oral reports and updates as far as the subcommittee's status and progress. Thank you.
I have a quick question about that. So if we do have something to present, does that need to be agendized? Do you have to have a motion? Like, okay,
Yes.
so the meeting before we would have.
So for example, with the Bylaws Commission, if someone wanted to report in a month or two, we met, we made significant progress, that's fine. But if I wanted to bring a draft for us to review, it would be agendized.
Okay.
So for the Facilities Committee, we did meet, and we had a very productive meeting. We had city staff, Mike Klein, and Michelle was there as well. And a new member of Public Works was also there. Michelle has the notes, so if there's any documentation, she'll have that. But the meeting was productive. We had a bunch of youth groups that were present in the dog park. And we continued the dialogue of the facility use issues. So there's nothing to report back other than that we met and it was a productive meeting.
I have a question. I'm noticing my name under the Facility User Subcommittee, but I don't think I'm on it.
That's an error, I'm sorry. It's so funny because I checked it with so many people and so.
And I'm honored.
Yes, we'll remove it for
But I'm
next
not
time.
on it.
Thank you.
Any
So, yeah, quick update on the volunteer acknowledgement. We've had 2 volunteer applications since August, and Kelly has just revived them to be put back into the subcommittee for approval. So we'll probably have a couple to show you perhaps next meeting. And we'll give them that beautiful surfboard award sometime, well, probably in January, I imagine.
Okay.
I have nothing to report on the Preservation Minor Alteration Subcommittee.
All right, if nothing else, we can move on to item M, member item.
We have a bringing history. I would like a reaffirmation of the vote we did last month so that since it's on the agenda now officially, that we have this bringing history of the community with Commissioners McCauley and Morocco on it. And then I'll tell you the update. So I would make that motion that we reaffirm the vote we took last month.
Would it be under subcommittee review and project updates, or could we move that to item M, member items and referrals to staff?
If you put in item M, it's not on the agenda again. So this is at least on the agenda for an update. And the update is we probably want to reaffirm that it's still there.
Sounds good.
That was my motion.
Just one other thing. I think whoever did the notes got Commissioner Galassi and me mixed up because I'm supposed to be on the facilities user subcommittee.
Oh, is that what happened?
No.
We will fix that in post.
Okay.
And then going back to your motion, can you repeat the motion one more time?
That we reaffirm that we are having a bringing history to the community committee, and there are Commissioners McCauley and Morocco that are staffing it at this point.
It's already established.
Yeah, it's already established, right?
Okay, I took some Brown Act training in the interim between the meetings, and I think it'd be better to just have the vote since it's on the agenda, just to clear it up that it's.
But didn't we establish it as a subcommittee already? So it's an existing subcommittee, right?
That's my understanding, unless there's some different information that we didn't do it correctly.
There's just no
the first time.
update with it, but it's already an existing subcommittee.
Okay. We're going to be meeting in January, and so we'll be coming back to you with some ideas and stuff. That's my update.
I just want to say that if possible, I'd love to attend one of those meetings, if possible.
We can do it at the library. It's
Yeah,
probably
we got
the
a
easiest.
little bit of space.
Yeah, we got a location.
We can go into
Thank
those
you.
Cubby rooms, yeah.
Okay, moving on to item M, member items and referrals to staff.
So want me to start?
Yes, please.
Okay. I would like to agendize having Wilderness Park designated a historic landmark. And it's going to be so that we can ultimately have it as a state historic landmark, but I would like to agendize that for the agenda for next meeting. That's the first thing. And so if there's a second,
I second that.
okay. Can we have a vote that we agendize it? So-
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Did we find out anything I mentioned last month about the framed presidential letters and location and why it's not in the museum? No? I encourage you and request, and I'm not directing, that it get, find out for the next meeting, or I may come to you offline to find out about what happened to it.
Just for clarification for the Wilderness Park, there was not an expectation of a staff report. It's just an internal discussion regarding the landmark, or what was the vision for that agendized item?
So in the past, the Historical Commission put forth a process. They've already had approved it. Commissioner Klinger was the one who was pushing it. And then there was a representative on, I think it was Rex and Parks Commission that was Jacob on your?
It was Jacob.
Jacob. So it was actually filtering through both of them, and then Commissioner Klinger moved out of the area, so it kind of fell apart. So just trying to get that process started again. But there is some material, I'll get you the material in advance so you have it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel
Sorry to
on it.
digress, but I just want clarification. Thank you.
I also had asked about whether we can get any of the museum metrics so that we can, Mr. Margolis said a couple months ago that, they want to encourage people to come there, but we have no benchmarks to measure. It's like, what's our standing point with regards to that? So I don't know if you've got that, or do I need to have that agendized so that it can get a report with regards to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to talk to Mr. Margolis about that, but one of the concepts that had come up was, there are already metrics provided by the library every month, so it might be a little bit easier to compile it as part of the statistics that we compile in the library, if that would be adequate. And then as long as we know what kind of data we're looking at as far as like foot traffic.
You have that census that you do for the library where you have how many people come in and use the facility. I know they have a guest book over there and they have events there, so we should be able to figure out from, how much in the last 6 months, for example, is probably a reasonable metrics to figure out, and figure out by what day, so we can change the hours, figure out the staffing, figure out how to promote it.
Yeah, because I actually do have some experience with people counters. Let me just talk, staff, there's different ways of doing it. The library currently, and I know we're talking about the museum, but library currently has kind of the unsophisticated gate counter. So somebody walks in and they walk out, that's counted as one, but each click is a transaction, so to speak. Some of the other devices I'm a little bit more familiar with are devices that track by actual timestamp, people entering and exiting, so you can have a little more sophisticated idea of your traffic flows, especially for large places like a library or a business. I would want to have a little discussion with staff, because it might be a little bit much to put in something too sophisticated. So you might get a regular gate counter. It might be a regular, have the docents trained on just marking down when people come in. So I'd like to get a little bit more logistics on it, because I do think that if you have just something like the last 6 months, 400 people came to the museum, and like you said, you're not getting the granular detail about, are more people coming on the weekends or more people coming after school? And so I just want to talk to logistics about staff, but we can definitely work on getting some metrics.
Okay, because they used to do that on a regular basis. The staff people used to put it together and report to the Historical Commission. This is just more of an announcement. There is a holiday celebration at the Morale House on Saturday. It's got carolos. They'll be from 11 to 3. So encourage everybody to come. The museum should also be open as well. I will come to you and talk to you again about the Charter Day and using the library to put a display on for January 19th. It looks like we're going to have about 4 charter amendments coming up, and it's an educational kind of display. This is the Arcadia publishing book on Redondo Beach, and it's actually sold through the community services. It generates funds that are supposed to be used for historical projects. They used to give reports about the royalties, and it kind of gets lost in the shuffle if it's not currently brought up. So to the extent you're able to figure out what the current status is, it had, I think at one point in June of 2022, $2,100, but that's money that doesn't come through the normal budget of the city.
Just for clarification, those are sales that happen at the museum. They have copies, or is it a relationship with Arcadia that's separate?
The museum has copies. They're selling them at the community services office on Artesia Boulevard.
Yeah, thank you.
You can buy it at bookstores. I think CVS has some of these historical books, but we get a quarterly statement about how much money comes in. And I may have brought a sample, so I did bring a sample from August 17th, 2022, so I will give that to you at the conclusion of the meeting. Sorry, I got a little bit of a list this time. So The budget year for 2023, 2024 included $1,000 that was budgeted for a historical researcher to focus on the history of the LGBTQ community in Redondo Beach. I don't believe it was spent at all, and I know that the city council 2 years in a row said that they wanted public arts to do something and they wanted the history research, so I think we may need to.
So that money was budgeted to community services or?
It was a part of the historical commission, $60,000 that they got a couple of years ago. And I don't know what the status is, so I don't know if we have to agendize going forward with that, but I do know that the city council has expressed in the past that they want research done on that.
That was fiscal year 23, 24?
Correct. And you can go back to the April 19, 2023 Historical Commission minutes, and you'll find the discussion about how they've set that out. This one, more for the people who came from Recs and Parks. You guys were working on a park ranger program, and I don't think I've heard any updates since I've been on this group, so I don't know where that falls into the picture, but that's something that I'm curious about if somebody knows something about.
Well, do you want me to talk about it now?
Let me just get the last piece, because you're involved with the last piece as well.
That did come up in our meeting last week.
Okay. The status of the Villarino plaque, I understand that Commissioner Lang is actually in communication, so you didn't report anything back in your report today, but when you talk, you may want to talk about that too. And that's it.
Is that all?
Yeah, well, okay, so we had the park ranger subcommittee, and we had a couple meetings with Kelly Orta, and we never really came to any conclusions. There was like a research component, so we wanted to figure out exactly what we were looking for so that we could put in a request regarding like a budget for, we wanted to see what kind of category they would fall under, if they would be like a community services type designation, or if they would fall under the maybe code enforcer designation. So that, and then the commission dissolved. So we, this is our second meeting. We can decide to pick that discussion back up, form another subcommittee, but that's kind of where it landed. As for the plaque in the park, the Villarino family plaque, I just got the email from Mr. Margolis, and that's when I said, can I reach out to him directly? So that just happened a few days ago. So no progress on that yet. My plan is to take his original draft, help get to the bottom of what it is, the story that he wants to tell, and then refine it from there, and then submit it back to Mr. Margolis or bring it to this commission, whatever feels right. Do you have anything else to add about the park ranger?
I can talk about when we get to the member items for,
Okay.
for that too. You have any
Okay,
other?
I have no referrals at this time.
I just have a question because last I spoke to Kelly Orta was in October, was the last update on pickleball. And at that point, the city council had approved, they were looking at proposals, they were reviewing proposals, and we're looking to select a consultant to complete the CEQA study. And that's the last I've heard, and I had a member of the public reach out to me and request an update to be posted on the city website, so if that could be
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I thought that there was a designated website.
There is, I
and
actually
that
have
was
it
there?
open.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's no
So the
updates?
last update was on 10/16. And
So just for clarification, so if there was an update to the website, then
website,
that
yeah.
would suffice? Or did you
Yeah.
envision it coming back as an item?
I don't think it needs to, as long as there's an update and, nothing needs to, if there are any questions, I'll ask, but if that could be updated so that the public knows what's going on, that would be great. Thank you.
For two items, one of them was if we can get a follow-up or status on the traffic remediation for Alta Vista Park. They were talking about putting either speed humps or some sort of bulb in the pavement there. We had heard about, and then we never really heard when or if that's happening. Public Works was talking about that. And then the other thing would be to agendize the item of the park ranger, the feedback we got with the community groups we met. And so if we can agendize a discussion on the beginnings of the idea of a park ranger, either at our next meeting or the meeting in the future.
Yeah, thank you. It's a lot to consider, and one of the things that when we get to the adjournment, I wanted to have a brief discussion on was the next meeting, so we can talk about that when we move on to that portion.
And then I just had a couple things too. I actually wanted to thank the Parks and Recreation Department. At Alta Vista, my family, was trying to do an event there, and it's kind of a lofty process, and they helped navigate through everything. They were going through everything like that. So, it was really nice to kind of, see their staff kind of in action and see how they respond to certain things like that. So I did want to kind of make a point to thank them specifically. And then also just to touch base on what we were doing with the park ranger, the former park ranger subcommittee, because I believe we didn't carry it forward. Essentially what we were doing is to make a recommendation that ultimately would go to council regarding, the need for a park ranger and kind of what the duties of that, what we kind of saw fit to kind of help with, various things within the city. One of the main kind of holdups or roadblocks with it was to see if there was an enforcement component to that person's job, as like a kind of mix between code enforcement, not really PD, and then also someone who can do outreach at the same time. So we were trying to navigate and work through that. I would be personally interested to carry that conversation going forward. My only thing is right now, like, the city's probably going through mid-year budget, right? And then, you guys are going to start to gear up for your annual budget in March. So I don't know if we want to have this conversation either, maybe at the next meeting, reestablish the subcommittee to see if we can get a decision made to the council by budget adoption period, because once, fiscal year is going to, how quickly that stuff comes. So I do think that, this is the end of the year. Essentially, we'll have a couple meetings before you really want to start presenting things for the annual budget to be adopted July 1. So perhaps next meeting we can talk about if we want to continue that subcommittee specifically, and then see if we can make a motion to, or make a recommendation ultimately that meets and gets presented to council. But that's where we dropped off with the park ranger subcommittee.
Can I clarify it? As I understand the budget process, we're actually starting at the end of January and February because the department heads have to start proposing what they want in the budget. So
this is mid-year. So municipalities in Redondo, correct me if I'm wrong, but
But I'm just saying, for the budget year itself,
right,
they're going to start sometime in late January and February because this last year they got it approved into like the middle of June. So they have like several meetings in a row in May. So it's
To kind of bridge the gap, it's true, we're at mid-year. It's never, in my opinion, too soon to be thinking about the next budget year and putting some information together. So it's something we can definitely take a look at.
And by budget information, I don't know if our recommendation ultimately would have like the budget. The only reason I say like when you're doing your annual budget is because when you're talking about allocating for staff and personnel, that's like the time to do it, not typically during mid-year. Like I wouldn't see
Right.
a request for a personnel resource at mid-year. You'd usually see it when the annual budget's adopted.
Yeah, the problem is that every single budget item has to have a staff report really with it.
Right.
So it's really the staff that ends up, doing the budget responses or whatever when you I don't know when your next strategic plan meeting is, but it's all part of that whole process. And there was last year something that was spelled out where it kind of said each month what was going to go on with it. So,
Well, and just in the broader sense, I don't want to speak for any of my colleagues as far as making any commitment on any of these things. All I can do is try to speak with them as soon as possible and then try to prioritize these referrals and see what we can have available first and what might take a little bit of time to get back as far as the data you want. But certainly the idea of creating or recreating the subcommittee sounds very feasible.
Okay.
I have one more thing before we adjourn. I was wondering if we could get an update on the Dominguez Park Playground. We worked on that on the Rec and Parks Commission and some months ago, and just curious what the timeline is and when they project it to be finished.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's no more member items, there was one last thing. I think before we adjourn, you wanted to clarify the schedule for next month or a meeting for next month?
Well, absolutely. Thank you. So the way we're looking at it now is that our next regularly scheduled meeting would be January 8th. And just for a little bit of perspective, most of the city hall in general is off for the holiday break. That's December 23rd through January 2nd. And with the Brown Act, we would need to certainly get that agenda out the 3rd or the 4th at latest. It doesn't give staff a lot of time to prepare anything and have a big reasonable response. I haven't spoken to all of the liaisons to see what they might have planned for the next agenda, but I wanted to make it clear that if we do meet on the 8th, which is possible, it might be a pretty light agenda simply because half of the month is kind of taken out. I should say roughly 2 weeks. It's a little bit less than that. I don't want to overspeak. I misstated, but it just doesn't give us a lot of turnaround time to work on some of these things and to collaborate. I did check into January 15th, which is available, and if we wanted to adjourn to January 15th at the same time, I don't want to guarantee too much, but it certainly gives us more leeway, gives us another week to prepare for the agenda and get that together. So I wanted to float that. Any questions?
Did Public Arts move their meeting date?
Well, I think I can look at it. It's cultural now, I think.
Cultural arts, sorry, yeah.
I have to take a look at their online calendar, but I did check with the city clerk before presenting this date. So the 15th is available, and if you'd like us to go back and look at some other dates, it's possible, but I wanted to try to keep in line with what we've regularly been meeting at.
I personally have a conflict on that night, but I can pass on that meeting, I guess.
When you get something from like we had today with preservation, do they give you a lot of lead time knowing that's going to be on our agenda, or how does that work?
It depends. Usually we get some notification that they plan on having an item, but then the details don't come till a little bit closer to publication. We can, again, work a little bit better on communication. I'd have to find out some more detail as far as when they're aware and when things are coming down the pipeline. But, I think when this started, I was under the impression there weren't many preservation items, and then since we've been meeting, I think
That's the meat of this, yeah.
And so that's I mean, I know all the things that were referred to or referrals are important and we should address. But, you know, I'm sure as you understand, we get a couple preservation items and it makes for a long night. It's not that we can't do it, it just makes for a long night.
Sure. Okay, so does anybody want to have any input on shifting the meeting to the 15th? Just because there might be more substance and what we can discuss more. Obviously, some of us might have conflicts with it, but
So what was the date you were going to miss, Commissioner Mara?
Oh, the 15th of.
Yeah, I'm also unavailable. I'll be out of town. 15th, I'm out too, by the way. Or quorum discussions.
is there,
We could meet February 12th if we want to adjourn to that date.
That could work, yeah.
it could work,
Yeah, that should be
Yeah.
fine.
yeah,
The only
That
question
would give
that I
us
have
more-
is,
more time.
More time
the
and more
council
things for the agenda.
is doing
Make it-
some
Be a long meeting, it's
things
okay.
with absences and cancellation of meetings. I'm not up to the current stuff. I know they're bringing some stuff back at the first meeting in January. How does do we need special permission from the council to skip a meeting in full?
Well, I know that we have done it before in other incarnations. The Library Commission has done it, especially in light of holidays, and this is kind of ancillary to that. I'd have to get back to you on that, but you know, if the if the adjournment was until February 12th, I got to say, in my experience, it has not been a problem. The only thing is the designation, because you could say lack of quorum, and it's just that.
Right.
Right.
This
It's
is
semantics. I think.
Yeah, I personally don't think they're going to look at this and say, you know, we don't want to participate with this. If, you know, you have a short turnaround to provide an agenda, I think it's pretty reasonable to say, let's not, you know.
And you're all proactive members, dedicated, and someone asked me the other day, said, so far we got 100% for tonight, but we've got a dedicated group, and we appreciate that.
So if nothing else, are we all okay? Do we want to vote on it, or do we just say we'll meet
I
in
think you have to
February?
vote on it anyway because it's part of the adjournment thing. So you're changing your adjournment.
Somebody like to make a motion
Yeah,
on
make
it?
a motion to meet, next meeting will be February the 12th. Is that the right date, Dana?
That should be,
12th.
February 12th.
yes, February 12th.
February 12th, my apologies.
Okay.
That's the motion.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. No other member items and referrals to staff. We'll move on to item N, which is adjournment.
To adjourn?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Happy holidays.